Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Well, it's time! And ladies and gentlemen, once again, if you're within the sound of my voice, you must be in the seats with once more. As always, I am your host, Dave Voigt, and as we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more right here on In the Seats With. And you know, if you like what we do here around here, I'm going to say that you do because you're listening right now. You're here. You're excited. Subscribe to In the Seats With at all your major podcast platforms. Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google. It's pretty much all good. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would really appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, and the Instagram, as the kids call it, at, well, you guessed it, we're at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large, because if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. Well, boys and girls, this is an exciting episode because we are on the brink of the Toronto International Film Festival, which is running from September 8th to 18th here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and also online for throughout Canada with some various selections. But it's an event where we're back. We're back full speed, sort of. The film community is re-embracing itself and sort of getting together and celebrating cinema, which is such an important thing to do. And, I mean, it's obviously something that we do here in the Seats fairly often. But in the spirit of that, we've got some friends of the show coming on to talk a little bit about the festival proper coming up. They are one, Mr. Matthew Rorabeck and Mr. Eric Marchen, who you may know from the Untitled movie podcast. You can also find Eric over at Rogers TV with his show Cinema Scene. They are both verbose and chatty and well-knowledged fellows when it comes to the world of cinema. And I know I wanted to have them on because I could just wind them up and let them go. Because we had a real fun time recording this podcast as we sort of preview the festival, which is imminent in the next few days. If you're thinking about coming down, if you're thinking about getting tickets, maybe this will help you out. But there's a lot. Again, we're so happy to be back, and we were happy to be at Elevation Pictures, our friends, because we recorded this outside on their patio, doing a little guerrilla style, as it were, because well, there may be some updates throughout the fest, kind of like that too, because we're on the go, we're moving and we're grooving, we're not in the studio, we're live on the streets, and it feels good. But sit down and enjoy our TIFF preview here with Matt and Eric from over at the Untitled Movie Podcast, and well, enjoy, and hopefully we see you down at the festival, which, like I said, is running from September 8th to the 18th. But enjoy this is an extra long episode of In the Seats With, but for the boys over at Untitled, this is probably like a micro episode, so I think it goes either way, but sit back and enjoy. Obviously, if you're within the sound of our voice, then we are in the seats, but we're in the seats somewhere a little different today. We're doing this on the road. We're doing this over at our friends at Elevation Pictures, and if you're listening to this, I do recommend you check out 3,000 Years of Longing, which is in theaters as we speak. But that's not what we're talking about today. We are talking about the Toronto International Film Festival. We're doing a little bit of a preview of sorts. Because, I mean, we got to talk about it. We're getting back to full speed, and I mean, who better to talk about it with than the boys from the Untitled podcast, Mr. Eric Marchen and Mr. Matthew Rorabeck. Boys, how you doing today?
What up? I am good. You know, just chilling. It's starting to panic a little bit that we are close. I keep saying this to everyone that it's both my favorite time of the year and our busiest time of the year. So, like, it's a double-edged sword of, like, oh, I'm very excited, but I know how tired I'm going to be and how crappy I'm going to eat for the next 3 weeks. Eric, how about you?
I'm already exhausted. Like, just doing this is exhausting. You know, like, Dave made a really good point where, like, we haven't really done the in-person thing to the full extent in the last couple of years. Obviously, the last year kind of felt like a little bit of a test run to come back into a reintegrated festival. And this year, you know, as we inch closer to the beginning of the fest, which is from September 8th to the 18th, one, I'm still thinking, where the hell did the summer go? And then two, it's like I'm in denial and I don't want to accept that we're going to be in full festival mode very, very soon. You know, you go to the website, they have a countdown clock, and it's giving me anxiety to the max. But there is part of me as well, and I'm sure it's the same with you guys, where there's an excitement to get back into that communal experience of the festival season.
Well, I think that's the big thing, but I mean, I think that's the first thing I kind of wanted to ask you guys, because we're getting, this is probably as close to full speed, with the exception of maybe Fan Expo, which I know is probably past by the time this will air. But this is as close to full speed as basically we've gotten in the past 2+ years. And I mean, trepidation, excitement, or is it a little bit of both?
I think a little bit of both. I think, like, last year was nice because it was, you know, like you said, this is year 3 of pandemic TIFFs, essentially. The first year did it completely at home. I remember watching a lot in my kind of basement den with Eric and just covering stuff that way.
Getting the HDMI cord out to the laptop.
Exactly, and then, Or there was an app that was, like, worked sometimes and didn't. But it actually went pretty smoothly, the at-home festival. And it was like a weird, nice change, but not nice, because I obviously love this time of year. And then last year, being that kind of hybrid festival, was kind of interesting because it kind of let us dip our toes back in it. And I remember, you know, going to a couple premieres or had some press screenings, even though everything was reserved seating and things like that. But I remember going to you and, like, just looking around, even that first weekend that's usually so busy with P&I screenings and seeing press everywhere, and no one. It was just a ghost town. So it was like
walking through Scotia, like, free and easy on opening TIFF felt definitely a little weird.
Yeah, and even around John Street and King Street, and just going, man, it's obviously TIFF is on right now, but it doesn't really feel like it. And, you know, ultimately, I think there were some good movies, and it still felt like TIFF. But, yeah, I think going full force into this where, you know, people, it seems like international press are coming back. Everything is basically normal. I'm excited. I think more excited than nervous or anything, but, like, I think there's still that kind of trepidation of, like, wearing masks and distancing, which isn't really happening anywhere. Like, I'm going to I got married, obviously. I'm going to wrestling tonight. I went to a concert last weekend. Like, I'm starting to go back and do normal things, so it does feel normal, but then you have to still have this in the back of your head where there's, like, you still got to protect yourself, and it still is, we are in this weird time. I don't know about you, but
yeah, I pretty much feel the same way, although there is still a little bit of apprehension of, like, you know, getting back into the festival routine, and, like, how many movies, you know, this is a personal thing, how many movies a day do you want to watch without burning yourself out? Because you have to think, like, you know, whether you're running a website or you're, you know, wanting to respect the filmmaker and enjoy the film, and then go from one movie to another, and thinking, like, how much time do you have to breathe? And Matt mentioned the TIFF diet, where, you know, that becomes more of a consideration the older you get, and you don't want to necessarily be just running on coffee and sugar the whole time. So there are those,
Coke and M&M.
yeah, and there are those things to kind of consider as well, because there's a part of you that, you know, it's work, but there's another part of you that wants to enjoy it, and you want to savor the films. You want to take them in, and you want to make sure that, you know, you're being respectful to the movies. Even if you don't necessarily like them, at least you can meet them halfway in terms of being, you know, engaged by the material that you're watching and by the films that are being presented at the festival, which is a nice curated group. Like, obviously this is a much bigger lineup than the past 2 years, so it is going back to more of a kind of buffet-esque kind of, I don't know why I have so many food analogies in this, but it's going back to more of a sort of a wider range of films, and with the programs kind of being a little bit more robust this year than they have in the past couple.
No, and I mean, you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where, you know, you guys started this in your 20s. I started this in my 30s. I'm in my 40s. You're in your 30s now. And we're like, oh my God, can I do this again? But we go into it full hog, and it's one of those things that, as a fan, but as a professional as well, it's something that at least for me, like, there is such a satisfaction of just being able to sort of get in there and be, like, just to do it and sort of run around and sort of run into you guys in the middle of the hall going, oh, what do you see? Oh, we saw that. What do you see? Oh, I saw that.
Oh, I'm running to this thing and you get 2 seconds.
Exactly.
Of, like,
yeah.
That is a blast. And yeah, going off of both of your points too, of like, yeah, last year it felt weird only seeing, you know, sometimes 1 or 2 movies in a day or something, right? Like that, where we're so used to that 3 or 4, sometimes
or even 5,
and there's those odd times where you do 6 or something.
And
like
you just
that.
burn yourself out, and then it's like you go to bed for like 3 hours and wake up at 9 a.m. for the next screening.
And then you burn yourself out. So I'm wondering, after 2 years of getting used to not so many, like what this year is going to be like on those 4 or 5 movie days, like, and trying to fit in, you know, changing landscapes as well. Like, we started a video version of our podcast on YouTube. Like, we haven't, you know, the last 2 years we had time to record reviews because there wasn't as many movies to see. So, like, going back to a year where we're, like, cramming in seeing as much as possible, but then also trying to do that work side of it. You know, now that we're getting a little bit older too, is like, whether it's writing articles or recording a podcast like we're doing right now, or doing a video version, I still haven't even, we're less than 20 days away and we're still
Stop saying that.
We still don't know exactly how we're going to do it, but like, it's even fun like we're doing this right now. It's like the run and gun style, like, throw a microphone down, record it on a patio, you hear cars in the background, people interrupt us in mid-podcast or something like that.
Puts a little mustard
because
on
we see Dave, or we see a friend walking down the street, and we're like, yeah, you're on the episode now, I'm not cutting this out. And that's the kind of fun, it keeps your energy going because of that, even though on those 4 or 5 movie days where you're like, okay, we have 20 minutes, we're going to record this review right now, and do it like in a lineup, or eating a taco, or something like that. Like, you just kind of, it is exhilarating, even though it's exhausting too. But
now, I mean, let's get to the work side of it a little bit before we get a little too inside baseball. But I mean, obviously we've got gala presentations back. We've got special presentations back. I'm curious. I mean, especially with the gala presentations, because I mean, for sort of the general public, the people on the outside looking in, that's the stuff that draws the eyes. And I'm kind of curious: is there anything that you guys are kind of looking forward to on that end of the spectrum?
Yeah, I would say that the film that has kind of caught my eye is Gabe Polsky's Butcher's Crossing, specifically because it's a gala movie, but it's a gala film that has Nicolas Cage in the lead role in this kind of frontier, kind of Western-esque story. And obviously Nick Cage has been on a bit of a comeback with, you know, movies like Pig and Mom and Dad and Mandy in recent years. So it's exciting to see a film of his play in a selection or group of movies that are usually kind of considered the most prestigious and commercial of the programming section.
No. Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. You know how much I love Nick Cage, so
high praise.
I'm absolutely in on that. I mean, we got the press release in front of us here. It's so funny, like another sort of not inside baseball, but like it's. I always forget what's playing because they announce so much, and I'm like,
we've been talking about that a lot recently too,
or even after the festival or during. Because again, going back to wanting to see so much and seeing so much, I'm like, what the hell is even playing? Black Ice. I'm a big hockey guy. I'm excited for that. Obviously, love The Father, so I'm excited for Florian Zeller's The Son. In the
and we're in Elevation. Those are both Elevation picture films, so nice shout out to them.
Which is funny because I'm clueless. I didn't even know that, so I'm not clueless. Like, but when I'm just looking at something, I didn't do that intentionally, but I hope they hear me. You know, I think The Woman King looks awesome, but it is one of those September releases that's just like sort of comes out the week after the festival.
Well,
actually,
during September 16th.
Okay,
so September 16th.
There's a couple of those.
There's also, speaking of Elevation, Moon Age Daydream, the David Bowie doc that also opens during the festival.
Which I'm always fine with. It's not; those aren't movies I necessarily tell people that they should, you know, maybe buy that gala ticket to, because it's like you could see it on the Friday. But for us, it is still exciting to see it with that big crowd, and it is a totally different experience. So even if it's Woman King or Moon Age Daydream is something that you want to go see, like, those are festival movies that even though they come out on that Friday, as long as you see them before that Friday, I still think if you get to see them at a venue like Princess of Wales or Roy Thompson Hall or the new is it the Queen Elizabeth that they're using? Is that what it is?
Is it?
I believe
theater?
so. Yeah.
Well researched, as you can tell.
Yeah, well, you know, our brains
We're
are mush
riffing.
already.
We're riffing here. We're going live.
I just love that you see a movie in a venue that you would not normally see a movie. So even for those movies that come out during the fest, I still think that they are worthwhile experiences, because I know a lot of kind of people poo-poo on those, being like, they come out on Friday, like you could just go see them for $12 at Cineplex, and I'm like, yeah, but Scotiabank Theater, which is a festival venue, is still maybe not the same as seeing something at one of those kind of big premieres.
For sure.
So yeah, the gala, like, you know, you got Peter Farrelly, thespian Peter Farrelly coming back,
Academy Award winner Peter Farrelly,
coming back with the greatest beer run ever, which just dropped a trailer the other day.
And also worth noting, because I mean, I'm looking forward to that, but I mean, it's not going to get a theatrical. It's going straight to Apple TV.
Yeah, well, sometimes they do like a limited. Are they not doing it with that?
They don't seem to. We don't seem to get that for Canada.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
Apple's interesting, where like certain movies do get like a light box kind of thing or something like that, but they haven't been doing it all that much with their stuff.
I mean, I think Prime has just done it that one time so far with recently the 13 Lives.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that's a great point, Dave, too. Like, there are those Netflix, Apple, all those streaming movies that, again, for people who may be doing TIFF for the first time or don't know what to go see, like, some of those movies you could go one way of being like, I can just wait and watch those on streaming. Why pay for them? But the other point of being like, oh, well, you might not be able to go see those in a theater. I'm not saying that the greatest beer run ever you need to see on the biggest screen possible, but
there is more of an emphasis to see something like that because of Peter Farrelly's last movie, winning the People's Choice Award, and also becoming probably one of the most divisive Oscar Best Picture winners afterwards, and that's also a launching pad for award season. You mentioned The Son, which I'm sure there's also a lot of pressure on Florian Zeller to deliver something on par with The Father, which took a lot of people by surprise because that movie played with the kind of, you know, classic art house awards baity kind of movie and did something almost miraculous with how it kind of really got into the mind of the character who's suffering from dementia. With here, you have a thematic, you know, follow-up, which is based on another one of his plays, which isn't a sequel to The Father, but I'm sure a lot of people might be confused when they see, you know, Anthony Hopkins pop up in The Son, but playing a different role. But here you have a story about a father trying to connect to his son at a time where he kind of feels alienated by the world, and it's part of this three trilogy with the father, the son, and the mother, and Florian Zeller right now kind of being one of the most sought-after playwrights.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, it's one of those things where there's going to be such a wide breadth of material that, I mean, I think a lot of audiences are going to be really happy. And I mean, I think that's a good way to transition into special presentations. Because, I mean, you mentioned about streaming, and I mean, obviously Glass Onion, Knives Out, it's going to be a big thing. And I mean, I do suspect it will get a theatrical release here, if not a limited one. But I mean, if you want to see it big and you want to see it early, you definitely have to see it at TIFF, for sure.
Absolutely. I remember, like, I need to rewatch Knives Out, because another TIFF thing is, like, you see so much that sometimes I feel like my brain is mush, where I need to reevaluate a movie after the festival because I don't necessarily trust myself completely seeing it for the first time. And I've watched movies years later that I thought I didn't like, and watched them and go, oh man, no, my brain was just mush. And Knives Out was one of them. But that experience of seeing that at the Princess of Wales, I think, was wonderful. And I feel like Glass Onion, they just dropped an image today. I don't know when you're dropping this, but there should be an image out there, maybe even a trailer soon. But yeah, Glass Onion is going to be a huge one, and I hope Daniel Craig just does a different accent in each movie.
As Benoit Blanc.
Yeah.
It's also going to be interesting with that movie because I remember the first time we saw that together, Matt. We were outside and we were listening to Star Wars fanboys complain about Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi, as that has also become weirdly divisive within the Star Wars canon. And now Johnson has moved on to make these Agatha Christie adjacent, you know, murder mysteries that have kind of influenced a lot of filmmakers to do similar things. You've seen Kenneth Branagh go back to the source material recently. You've even seen, you know, films like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies kind of play with certain genre elements kind of akin to what can be found in those classic sort of tropes. Another movie on this list that I love that also is kind of sort of taking a left swerve with that material is Park Chan-wook's Decision to Leave, which movie picked up back when it played at Cannes, and it being kind of a story about a detective falling in love with one of the suspects. Anytime Park Chan-wook makes a movie, it's always worth celebrating.
Of course, yeah.
How have we gone this long and not mentioned Spielberg?
Well, that's what I was.
Well, that seems to be the definitive, like the film that will define this festival.
The King of Hollywood is coming to TIFF. How do you guys sort of feel about this?
His film is only playing at TIFF.
That's
the
right.
Fableman.
Yeah.
So that is the big sort of crown jewel of this festival, being a Spielberg movie. The first time Spielberg has brought a film of his own that he directed to TIFF, that is auto-fiction based on his time growing up as a child in Arizona, sort of having to contend with the fact that his parents are slowly separating and how that affected him. So there are the aspects of the coming-of-age story that Spielberg has kind of been thinking about approaching ever since he saw Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird and had kind of been enamored by that movie. And then you've seen a lot of coming-of-age movies in the last little while that have, you know, done well awards-wise, whether it be movies like Belfast or Licorice Pizza or even Minari. So this will be interesting to see something that's much more personal from him, but also maybe seeing something that kind of gives us the clues into which, you know, he became the filmmaker that we know and love today. Obviously, a lot of his films in the 80s and early 90s kind of, you know, played upon the fact of the distant father who was either not in the picture, whether it be in E.T. or the father that was more interested in the aliens than his own family in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
So this will be something that tackles that head on, you know, and something that doesn't have a science fiction or a horror bent to it.
That we know of.
Yeah.
No, I'm pumped too, man. Like it might be one of the Q&As that I actually like want to stay for.
Right.
Like I'm usually not a big Q&A
If we get
guy.
in.
Yeah, I know.
The other
It's
thing.
gonna. That's a great point, Dave. Like it's gonna be the hardest ticket to probably get.
Other
at
than
the
Harry
festival.
Styles, but yeah.
That's true. You're making also another very good point. As we can see, he played 2 concerts the other night that were very expensive and very sold out. Not Spielberg. Spielberg didn't play a concert.
He's got the voice of an angel.
I'm pumped for Fablemans. You got some CanCon in there with Seth Rogen. I don't know if there's any other Canadians.
Well, it's
but,
also
like,
speaking of CanCon, it's a Take This Waltz reunion
Oh,
with,
yeah.
Very
with
much
Seth
so,
Rogen
yeah,
and Michelle
yeah.
Williams and
Me
Sarah
too.
Polley.
There you go.
Women Talking is another film that I think a lot of people are excited to see. You know, the next feature from one of, you know, Canada's most prominent and important filmmakers.
As
you know.
Stain said, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So,
It's been a while.
I mean, Spielberg is at the top of everyone's list. Knives Out, Women Talking. The Martin McDonagh film, The Banshees of Ed Sheeran.
Did you say Ed Sheeran?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, there's so many sort of familiar
Yeah.
TIFF faces that are coming back, like a Martin McDonagh, like a Sarah Polley, like a Park Chan-wook.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of filmmakers that audiences will know and trust that are coming back to the festival. Even some of the more obscure ones, like, and I mean, even people I don't necessarily trust, because I mean, Lena Dunham has a film in the film festival.
Yeah.
And I really like Sharp Stick, which is
Yeah.
on video on demand now for our friends at Elevation Pictures.
This is just one big elevation
They
ad.
didn't pay us to say this.
Even though they gave us Flow Water, which
Yeah.
we appreciate.
Boxed water, yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Liv.
But yeah, I mean, it's a lineup that for audiences looking for familiar faces and familiar directors, I think they're going to be pretty happy, especially with special presentations. for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I think another film that is also Elevation Pictures in Canada that we should mention is The Whale, Darren
Yes,
Aronofsky's
Darren
film,
Aronofsky's
which
coming
I think
in,
if again, this is the whole award season kind of.
Is this the first time he's been here, or was he here
You
for?
know, Darren Aronofsky's been here before. Mother. I
And
saw
Black Swan.
Mother
And
and
Black
Black
Swan.
Swan,
Yeah.
which were
And
two
The Wrestler.
hot tickets, and The Wrestler.
Oh, Wrestler. Of
So basically
course,
everything
yeah.
he's done.
Yeah.
Dave.
Yeah.
We have.
I
Matt
always
has-
forget they were his.
I know.
Darren Aronofsky was basically in Matt's lap when
Yeah.
we were watching Yorgos Lanthimos' The Lobster in
Oh,
IMAX.
He's watching his ex-wife, and I'm just like, his head, I could pat his bald head. I didn't, but it was in front of me.
Give me some of that creative juice. Yeah, with The Whale, I mean, like, a lot of people are really focused on Brendan Fraser's kind of comeback role. We've obviously seen him do really great character work in No Sudden Move, the Steven Soderbergh movie,
Yes.
which may or may not be on HBO Max anymore in the U.S.
Still is on Crave, so check it out. So.
But I think like you look at this and No Sudden Move, and then even with the Scorsese film coming down the line, like there's this new era, the Brendan Fraser Renaissance or whatever you want to call it. But it is interesting as well from an awards point of view that if he is nominated for a Best Actor Oscar, and if he does win, he will be the first ever Canadian to win the Oscar for actor in a leading role. No Canadian has ever won actor in a leading role.
That's wild.
That is a little wild. But Aronofsky, a guy that I'll go see anything. And I saw Black Swan here, one of my favorite movies. And I saw Mother, which was also an interesting experience at the fest. So yeah, I'm pumped for The Whale. And then Brendan Fraser, who I used to, when I was younger, I hated him because I hated the Mummy movies. And I just something about Brendan Fraser made me mad. But I read that article, what was in like GQ or something, is like kind of comeback article, and it was very sympathetic. And I was like, oh man, like I am like I'm cheering for that guy. So like I can't wait for The Whale. It looks great. But yeah, Dave, you're nailing it with it's a great mix of familiar faces and people like Discovery stuff, and we'll get to the Discovery program at some point. But yeah, the special presentations is always stacked. Like even something like Bros from Nicholas Stoller, which is a big kind of, it's like, I guess it's a Hollywood comedy, but like the one being like a totally gay cast and everyone from LGBTQ plus community, like even the straight roles. Like I think that's like an important thing for mainstream comedy, and like premiering that at a festival and having a big premiere for Bros, I think a world premiere here is really awesome as well.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good point to dovetail off of, because like when you go through the whole lineup, there is such a strong breadth of sort of representative lineup, and it's not issue cinema. It's not trying to sort of put a point over your head or try to make it's just being
inclusive.
Very honest, inclusive, and fun. And I mean, and that's sort of the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen more films by women in the festival and people of color, and like all of that is fantastic. And you want it to obviously be like a 50-50 split, and that's how it should be.
Well, you want it to reflect the world we live in, and different perspectives of the world. Like that's the thing that I love about this festival and movies in general, is that when you go into a film, whether or not you like it at the end or you love it, it's one of those things where it's always from a different point of view, and you're getting a different perspective on something, and sometimes it's like, oh, I didn't think of it that way, or
that's exactly
this is a very provocative way of looking at things, or just challenging you, and I think when it comes down to it as well, like you can look at kind of like the named directors or who's going to be in the cast, but a big part of this as well depends on scheduling, right? Especially for us, where it's like, okay, if you're going to do interviews, or if you're going to watch 4 to 5 films or 6 movies in a day, you also kind of have to look at what's playing when and how many times. Like if you have a movie that you really want to see and you kind of have to sort of schedule around it, then you have
Tetris that you're playing.
And Matt is very good at that. That should be something that if anybody needs help putting together a schedule, hire him. He's amazing at it. But you have to take that into consideration as well, because if you go to a festival, if you go to the festival on a weekend, let's say, you have to kind of allow yourself to discover something and be taken in by the opportunity or the chance of something new. You can't just say like, oh, I'm going to go on this weekend and this better be playing then, because it doesn't work that way. It's not like a regular listing of films where the film you want to see is going to be playing on every day that week,
for
right?
5 times.
It doesn't work that way.
And it's something we always bring up too. Is like, go see that big movie that you're excited for. Like I always support that. But then if you are coming down for a weekend or a day and you can see a couple movies, try to pick one thing that either maybe has some buzz or maybe doesn't have some buzz, but you just like the synopsis, and like try to discover something, right? Like go for those big bets, those easy bets, like put like going, oh, I know I'm going to like that because I know what the director is or the actors that are in it or something like that, or you don't know you're going to like it, but you hope you do. And then pick something that you're like, oh, this just sounds interesting. I don't know the cast, or I don't know the director, or I don't know, like, and then you might just discover something that might become your new favorite film or your new favorite filmmaker. And like, for people who go to TIFF each year, that's like my one kind of piece of advice. Is like, just pick one even. Like start with one, and if you go multiple days, then you can add on a few more. But like, I know it's always kind of daunting to look at all of these movies and
Yeah.
then go like, well, do I only go here are the big ones, and then those movies might be the hardest ones to get tickets for, and then you might be disappointed. It's like, well, try to get one of those and then go see a couple things that are either foreign or smaller Canadian or something like that too. So.
Yeah, or if you listen to the Untitled Movie podcast or In the Seats, and like Dave, I know you did an interview with Joanna Hogg, and
Yeah.
Joanna Hogg, who directed The Souvenir Part 1 and 2, has The Eternal Daughter.
Looking forward to that,
which
yeah.
stars Tilda Swinton, who's also in 3,000 Years of Longing. It's all connecting synergy. But you look at something like that, it's like that's a movie that does, you know, it's getting distributed by A24 in the US,
Yeah.
but it still is kind of a small, kind of haunted ghost story, kind of gothic kind of thing. So I think like that's something that's maybe not on everybody's radar, but if you gave that a shot, maybe you'd be surprised by it. Like I remember seeing Steve McQueen's Hunger in 2008.
For sure, yeah.
And that was the year when Slumdog Millionaire and The Hurt Locker and The Wrestler were there, and Waltz with Bashir, and those movies had a higher profile at the time. But then watching Hunger, I was like, who is this director and who is this lead actor and this amazing, you know, single take between Liam Cunningham and Michael Fassbender, and just the audacity of it not breaking for like what felt like 20 minutes and just being completely blown away by this, you know, visual filmmaker, and then learning about, you know, Steve McQueen's art history, and then, you know, look where he is now, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah. No, and I mean, it's one of those things where you get to see the swell of a movie, and I mean, and for us, I mean, I think that's like the exciting thing. And I mean, I'm not even saying this because we're recording this right now, but I mean, I remember the year we all got to watch Florida Project early, and we're all blown away by it. And we get to see the land swell of a movie like that, and it's one of those things where it helps us sort of remind ourselves of the joy of the job, but also to try to share that with other people. To, like you said, Matt, just see, like, take a risk on something.
Yep.
Like, get out there, do it, because that's what TIFF is so different from other festivals, because people will have that access.
It's open to the public. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of festival goers, especially on our side of things, take for granted, is that, you know, most festivals, whether it be Cannes or Sundance or Telluride or Venice, a lot of which are happening around the same time, they're for press and industry first and foremost, where TIFF is one of the few sort of mainstay festivals that is open to the public. So, you know, industry types and critics, you know, when they go and see Bros, and if it gets that comedic reaction where people are laughing uproariously and engage with it, you're going to kind of be able to kind of get an idea of how it will play when it gets released theatrically.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Now, I mean, just to pivot onto another program, because this is one I'm always interested in, because it's one where, you know, it hasn't been around that long. It's one that got birthed sort of in our sort of professional lifetimes, and that's primetime.
Yeah. Which
And
is
I mean,
in the last couple of years.
I
really,
remember
right?
at the
5 years?
beginning, we
Inspired
were all,
by Freddy Krueger, right?
I remember
and
the-
Dream Warriors. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
I remember at the beginning of it all, like, we were all like, primetime television, no, it's a film festival. But now it feels like it's sort of part of it, and there's flow to it just because of the birth of, like, the long-form television and how sort of really fantastic stuff has been birthed out of that. And I mean, the one thing I'm really looking forward to there is just Kingdom Exodus. And I mean, I know Lars Von Trier is not the most popular person in the world,
Sure.
but at the same time, to see sort of a conclusion to what really was a fantastic filmmaker's sort of magnum opus, especially considering the health issues that he's having now, is fantastic to see, especially on the screen before it hits. I forget what the streaming, whoever picked it up, but before it starts streaming.
Yeah, I
later
think
in the fall.
Primetime's always been interesting because, like, you know, we joke about that it's all content now, and like,
Right.
what's the difference?
What's a
between
film? What's a TV show? What's a GIF?
Miniseries? What's a, yeah. And I, you know, even this 5th season of Handmaid's Tale premiering here, which makes sense because a lot of it's shot here and stuff like that too. But we saw Black Mirror, the Netflix version,
The St.
when
Jupiter
it-
episode.
and that was a great time. And I think just an opportunity to see that stuff on a big screen, I think, is kind of great. I mean, personally, like, I think High School, I was kind of interested in because I know it's from, is it Tegan and Sarah? No, who is it based on? Who wrote it? I forget.
Yeah, the
I'll
singers,
find it.
right?
Yeah. But it's just like, I
You
mean,
love music.
and I'm not a music guy, but like I am a High School movie or TV show vibe, and I
right.
like that vibe. And like, I remember reading about it when that got greenlit, and I think an opportunity to see the first couple episodes on the big screen is always awesome. I know recently that's not even on here. I think Documentary Now is having
that's right.
first couple episodes of the new season of that as well, which I haven't really been caught up with, but I have watched a couple episodes, and it is very funny. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, going back to Lars Von Trier, it is really interesting to think about, obviously he was diagnosed with Parkinson's this year, and him being a provocateur on the world stage of film, and, with The Kingdom, the obvious comparison would be something like Twin Peaks: The Return, surmising, his career as a whole. But you look back at the years that he's been at TIFF, a lot of his stuff is really hard to get into, depending on how much notoriety it has going in. I remember with like the year that Antichrist played at Cannes, and then it played at TIFF, and that became like a hot ticket film, which was bizarre because of considering what Antichrist is.
Of course, yeah.
But then Melancholia, like something like that kind of being another film where like, he was smart enough to cast someone like Kirsten Dunst at a time where like she wasn't given that kind of role in that kind of movie. And you watch that in the Ryerson Theater with the sound blaring, and you're kind of like taken aback by how disturbing and almost hateful Lars Von Trier can come across to his characters in the world that he's created. But there's also something within that he is an artist, and as much as maybe a lot of people, I think most people, do not like the house that Jack built, that also kind of surmised a lot of what Lars Von Trier was as a person, to the point where he was being self-referential.
Does Lars Von Trier like the house that Jack built?
Probably. him and Paul Schrader, like, I feel like those are guys that will put their own films on like best of lists and things like that.
Of course, right.
Where it's like, like the films that define like a decade or what have you. It's like, we saw that with like the IndieWire 90s week. Paul Schrader put Affliction on his list.
Right.
Yeah, like those guys are miserable sods, but at the same time, there is something like Breaking the Waves is an amazing movie, and like the performance that Emily Watson gives in that film is nothing short of incredible. And like, again, like even Dancer in the Dark, which Bjork has talked very openly more recently about how abusive Lars Von Trier has been. You can't not disclude that. You have to kind of take it as a whole. You have to accept the good and the bad of what a filmmaker is. And so I'm curious about that, of this grouping, the primetime. But going back to what Matt said, and just the idea of like, what is film and what is television, and those lines blurring, obviously with David Lynch playing John Ford in The Fablemans, like Twin Peaks: The Return was another discussion point where it's like, where do you think that began, where that point where it was like, okay, television is on par with film, or is it? Because some people are still purists, right?
Of course,
where it comes to the fact, it's like, in this year we've talked nonstop about The Rehearsal, or, Better Call Saul is one of your favorite shows, and like those are...
A good story is a good story, right?
Yeah.
Like, and the mediums are pretty similar, just one is maybe more episodic than the other, but a lot of the times movies can be episodic and TV can be broken up into like what feels like one long movie. So I feel like those lines are blurring.
But and its scope too, because I mean, I just started watching like 5 Days of Memorial, and I mean, and it feels big.
Yeah.
Like if a story is creating a big feel, then who cares what the sort of the delivery medium is?
Game of Thrones show I watched the premiere of, and Game of Thrones, I thought I was out, but I mean they reeled me right back in, and I'm like, this is cinematic is like a word that you describe TV shows.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, okay. Again, I think it's just cool to see some of that stuff. I would watch a ton of TV on the big screen. Like, I know I'm excited. We're getting off topic, and we'll bring it back in a second. But like, they premiered footage from The Last of Us yesterday.
I knew that was coming.
And I was like, I want to watch that shit in a theater. I want to, and I wanted it for this program so bad because I knew it had like a January kind of release date.
Right.
And it shot in Canada, and like has some.
There are still a few stragglers. Maybe they'll throw one in.
Oh my God, Dave! I would lose my mind because I'm so excited. And I know TIFF does premieres, and they have a good relationship with Crave because of the Bell thing, where they premiere TV shows at their theater all the time. And I just think that's awesome. And going back to it was Tegan and Sarah, and it's based in the 1990s on their high school experience in Calgary. So that brings it back to what we're actually talking about. But I am excited for high school. And the Lars Von Trier thing, I haven't watched any of it. So, and he's a guy that I'm more on the like I didn't like House That Jack Built. Antichrist doesn't do it for me. Melancholia I did see at the festival, and Miserable Bastard. But like, you put that into his movies, and it makes some interesting things sometimes.
Yeah, it has his voice is in everything that he's made.
It's distinct for sure.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about this even just today. Like, even if it's a filmmaker that you don't like someone like, we were talking off air, like about Baz Luhrmann, where it's like, I'm not a Baz Luhrmann man, but I see him as an artistic filmmaker, as a singular voice. Everything that he's making feels like it's part of his personality and who he is, and I rather take something like that than something that is just
the middle
kind
of the road, kind of
homogenized. Yeah.
Like,
It's just
like it's made
a
by
movie of the week
committee or something like that. But yeah, Primetime's interesting. I don't see much of it at the festival, to be honest.
No, neither do I, really. I think this is going to be my first year where I make a point of trying to see
something. But like the Black Mirror was the most recent one that I feel like we had some time, and we knew it was only like 40 minutes. That's also good. Sometimes you need that little break of like, I know sometimes they do 2 or 3 episodes, but
so we saw the San Jupiter episode and also Nosedive, which was directed by Joe Wright and starred Bryce Dallas Howard.
Which was great to see those on the big screen.
And didn't we see that in IMAX too?
Yeah, no, not Black Mirror, I don't think.
We did.
And that's another thing. Like, again, so some tips for people for TIFF if you're listening to this too. Scotiabank 12 is the IMAX theater. So a lot of the times you'll be able to see shit you would never usually see on the IMAX
Like that year
screen.
they had the Lighthouse on the IMAX, and it was shot in like the greeniest sort of worst sort of form. Yeah.
And it'll fill up most of the screen because it's in 4:3,
yeah.
and you get interesting things like that. So whether it's a TV show, seeing it in IMAX that's not The Inhumans, or other weird things, like I saw Moonlight in the IMAX theater and things like that.
I saw Mother, and that movie is so claustrophobic because it's all close-ups, right? A lot of it. So like it adds something to that experience. Or we mentioned The Lobster, where like, you're not going to see it, and obviously it's not meant for the IMAX screen, and it will remind you of that. I think that's another quick thing before we get into any of the next categories. The thing that I am actually looking forward to in terms of the audience interaction are seeing some of those advertisements that play before the trailer or before the movies, where like you see like the RBC Uncle Morty or the Lily How Will You Live or the Key Light.
Because if you see as many movies as we do, you see those over and over.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily see them at P&I screenings, but we also go to a lot of public screenings.
That's true, yeah.
And you do see those ads over and over again, and they become that collective kind of experience for those people who see a lot of movies during the festival. Like, I still don't know what Bulgari is, and I'm excited to see that ad before every movie, because that's a new sponsor. Usually, like, I think L'Oreal's gone now, right? Or no, are they still there?
I don't know. But I mean, we'll never forget the Key Light.
If you go to enough TIFFs, you'll know what we're talking about, and you'll start to go, oh, your major sponsor, Bell,
but
RBC,
Lily,
Visa.
How Will You Live?
Yeah, you'll get those, and I can't wait to see what those are mini movies in themselves. So
beautiful.
I'm excited for that.
Now, we've been talking a little bit about the weird stuff. Now, that means we got to transition into Midnight Madness.
Yes.
Before we talk about the program, I got to ask, how do you guys feel about not going back to the Ryerson?
You know what? That's a good point, and I think I like that everything is on King Street. Like, I think, there will be purists, and Midnight Madness is that program where you get, like, the people who go to Midnight Madness, a lot of those people just go to Midnight Madness, right? Yeah. So the Ryerson was iconic, which is no longer even the Ryerson. I don't know what the school's called anymore. Did they change it to something?
No idea.
Anyways, it's like Toronto University
Technical
or something
or other,
University. So anyways, the former Ryerson Theater, it was iconic for Midnight Madness for a good chunk of time. It will be weird to go to, maybe it's at, I think the Queen Elizabeth is where they're doing it, and it'll be an interesting venue, but I had fun when we saw Halloween at the Elgin.
That was a fun night,
right? So I feel like it will have that vibe where, the Ryerson is a great theater, but like, it does look like a university auditorium, right? So like, going to like one of these beautiful theaters like Princess of Wales, Queen Elizabeth, I don't even know if I have the name right, I'll figure that part out, but it's probably in this. I'm just like pumped. This, I just love that program so much, and I think cramming a couple thousand maniacs into a theater, it'll still be a blast no matter where it is. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna miss the Ryerson just like for those little things of like trying to get in as quickly as possible to get those seats that have
the extra
leg room. But there are fond memories of nostalgia. Like I think if you've been there over the years, you will miss it. Like I loved seeing Green Room there. I thought. The screening of The Bad Batch was a lot of fun.
It's not the Queen Elizabeth, it's the Royal Alexandra. I keep saying Queen Elizabeth.
It's okay.
It's all on King Street now. That's the one good thing. And
if you want to really kind of like know the stuff, you can just download the press releases. They're there for you. Don't worry about that.
Visit TIFF.net for all sorts of information.
Hey, it's a new venue. It's new for me. I'm still getting used to it.
But the Bad Batch screening was so much fun because right before the movie began, Jason Momoa walked past us, and we couldn't stop laughing because he was holding a Brita water jug as though it were a coffee cup, and he looked at us laughing, Matt, myself, and I think there was a couple other people with us.
Yeah, our friend Mike Munz.
Yeah, and he said to shut the hell up.
Yeah.
So we just couldn't stop laughing. But he did it in a way that was like obviously
funny. Like he knew he was.
But there is going to be something.
That man has to keep hydrated.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he's Aquaman. But yeah, there are things like that where like I think you'll miss it. But the one thing I won't miss about that theater are the seats, because if you're sitting there for like 2.5 hours, you do feel it.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if the Royal Alexandra seats will be any better.
No,
no. A lot of these older theaters and the play, like made for plays and stuff like that don't have the comfiest seats either. But
the Elgin in the Winter Garden was like that as well. And,
which I'm bummed that's not coming back either, right?
No,
which I'm okay with. I just like. Both those theaters were gorgeous, I think.
But even when Hot Docs was still playing films, like it always felt like we would always kind of have to reschedule or schedule around that. It's like, oh, do we really want to go all the way out to Hot Docs and then run all the way back to the downtown core to see something that's playing at one of the other theaters?
I know, it'd be like, okay, this has to be the end of my day because I'm not going back downtown.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of love that everything's on King Street, right? Like the festival has brought it closer and closer to Lightbox, to their headquarters, and I think having those big theaters of Princess of Wales, the Queen Alexandra, Roy Thompson Hall, TIFF Bell Lightbox, and then you have the Scotiabank, which is a little bit north, and I think they still have the AGO Theater, Jackman Hall for like Wavelengths,
which again is still
like
pretty
that.
close.
It's still all within like kind of a very
blocks,
walkable couple blocks, and I think that's making a very awesome like central hub for the festival. So I'm actually kind of excited that Midnight Madness is going to that theater, and it will be a short walk, because there were those other times where you'd have a 10 p.m. movie or maybe 9:30 p.m. movie at Princess of Wales, and then I'm like, fuck, I'm not gonna make Midnight Madness or something like that, or I'm gonna get there 2 minutes late, or I'm gonna get a shitty seat because it's like it's not reserved seating over there, and I think that's going to make that even stronger, of just being able to go, oh, I can catch a 9 o'clock movie, get out at 11:30, and go over to Midnight Madness right next door and be able to see a movie in Midnight Madness. It might actually help me see more, I think, in the program. Even though, I as we talked about earlier, us getting older, I'm like, I don't know how many Midnight Madness movies I can
I was trying to do one.
do anymore.
I was trying to do one at midnight.
So, going back to that, what is the one movie that you guys might go see at midnight?
Well, it'll be an impossible ticket, but I mean, the Weird Al, Al
opening night
show would be a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there.
Roku presents.
Yeah, a Roku movie does scare me a little bit, but like, not that I just don't know what that even means.
Right.
Because like, I don't know if I've ever seen a Roku original movie.
I think this might be one of the first.
Yeah, but I love Daniel Radcliffe keep taking risks and doing interesting things, and I do think that will be a hard ticket to get, but having Weird Al down here, and it seems like Peter's really passionate about it, and if it has that kind of walk hard vibe of like that satirical nature of taking down like musical biopics, I think it could be like a lot of fun. And for it to play Midnight Madness, I feel like it does have that vibe, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list now. What I really like about Peter Koplowski as a programmer is that he's always very eclectic with his taste, that he's able to kind of, pick the kind of classic, like, slasher, horror, genre stuff, mix a little bit of martial arts, mix a little bit of sort of genre filmmaking that skews maybe to more Vanguard, RIP to that program, which was an amazing program. But looking at this list, I would say maybe the one I'm most kind of curious about is Sisu, I believe it's pronounced. It's from the director of Rare Exports and Big Game.
Yeah.
And that kind of sounds interesting, where you have a Finnish soldier taking on Nazis. So, you know, it might be in poor taste, but you know that you're in for a hell of a time.
Yeah.
And then even like Ty West's movie, you know, Pearl. I mean, that has an audience.
And again, that'll be another one opening mid-festival.
Yeah, the 16th. That has an audience already kind of built in because of...
Does it have a Canadian distributor?
Yes, it does.
BBS
just
picked it up.
Yeah.
So that film... I know where that's coming from. So that movie just... you know, being a prequel to a film that's already played, you know, with X.
Yeah.
So, you know, people are going to have expectations going into that, right? What about you, Dave? Do you have any, like other than the Weird Al movies or anything maybe like that's even in the other programs that's a little bit off radar that maybe people aren't expecting?
Well, I mean, I think the thing in the Midnight Madness that stands out for me is probably the Peter Hyams. I mean, I'm blanking on the title.
Oh, you mean his son, John Hyams?
John Hyams. I always get those two mixed up. I always get those two mixed up. But yeah, I mean, that looks like a really interesting piece of work. And I mean,
because he directed Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning.
That's right. Yeah, and I mean, I'm always a sucker for the horror anthology movies, and VHS 99 will probably be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the VHS movies, but we were talking too, like, I like that time period. Like, you know, that I was 10 years old at that time, so I feel like it's just etched in my brain, the new millennium and stuff
Star
like
Wars
that.
Episode 1 was opening that year.
Yeah.
One of the segments is directed by popular Volker tourist Johann Roberts, director of Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City.
Yeah.
This is an Elevation movie.
And going back to the Hyams movie, is that the one written by Kevin Williamson? Or
yes, it is.
Yeah, and I mean, I love Scream, and that's a reason why
you love Scream, but do you love Sick?
Yeah, I'm excited to see Sick as well. I think it's a fun lineup, and like, there are multiple movies here that I would consider going to at midnight, and I think it just works for... It both works for our schedule and doesn't, because you can go, well, nothing else is playing at midnight, so I can fit that in there and not have to worry about fitting it in my schedule for a P&I screening when it's playing against something else.
Yeah, I mean, the Midnight Madness movies we tend to go to are the ones where it's like, okay, I don't have to be anywhere until 1 o'clock the next afternoon.
Yes, exactly. But a lot of the times I have an 8 a.m. movie or something like that. And I think with Midnight Madness, too, again, they have a lot inside baseball stuff for us, but, like, a lot of it premieres the next morning at like 8 a.m. or something like that, which is weird to watch, like, a horror movie that early, but
I remember watching Kill List at like noon, and it was like the day after it played at TIFF that year, like the Midnight Madness section, and just being like, man, this is really weird to watch this in the daytime. Still very unnerving, and my favorite Ben Wheatley movie. But another one I think to kind of keep on people's radars is The Blackening, the Tim Story.
No, that looks interesting as well, for sure.
Director of Fantastic Four.
Yes, but it's been described as kind of playing with like
that doesn't sell it though. I mean, come on, you know?
Cabin in the Woods tropes, specifically about how people
fun.
of color are treated within the horror genre.
No, totally. Yeah. And I mean, before we sort of expand into other things, there is one thing I want to bring up is that in years past, obviously because of the pandemic, we got used to sort of the digital aspect.
Yeah.
And while they haven't gotten rid of it entirely, there is a special curated section that a friend and colleague of ours who transitioned over to be a programmer at TIFF, Norm Miller. Yeah, Norm, you're a traitor. You're a traitor. But he's programmed 24 films out of the lineup to specifically program for digital for audiences all across Canada. So, like, if you're not in Toronto and you want to see a movie at TIFF, you still can. And we do highly recommend that you try that out, because it's definitely going to be some of those films that, like we've been saying before, are the ones that aren't going to be on the radar.
Sure.
The ones that, you know, maybe you're going to take a chance on. It's easier to take a chance on something at home than it is that if you've got to head into the city and get parking and this, that, and the other, you know.
Dinner, all that stuff. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm glad they're keeping that, because that was something we talked about in previous years. In our kind of roundup episodes of being like, I love that aspect of it, and I would love if they kept that. I would love if they even expanded it a bit more, but it is nice to see that they aren't getting rid of it completely, because I felt like it was successful the last couple of years of keeping people and just opening it up to people who can't come to Toronto, to your point, Dave. Like, it is very, you know, if you're in the GTA, or some people travel to it. I know, being a huge film fan, you might travel across Canada or the world to come to this festival. And,
it's expensive.
It is. Really so, like, I love that it opens it up and you get to see something. Like, I wish it had a mix of some of that bigger stuff too, but I understand with what happened last year with some movies like leaking and stuff like that, that, you know, it is some of that smaller movie, but then some of those smaller movies, but again, that kind of forces people to kind of take a chance on something and still be part of the festival. So I haven't looked at what that list is, but I'm just glad that
there is a little bit from every sort of department.
Category,
like it can be wavelengths or, you know, Midnight Madness or special presentations
Cool.
or contemporary world.
That's
It's
awesome.
all across the board. Now, I mean, just to start putting the bow on this, because I mean, we'll be going for almost an hour, so I don't want to bore people too much longer.
You got me and Eric. We're going for 2.5 hours,
Yeah.
baby.
If you listen to the Untitled Movie podcast episodes, we go.
This
for
is like a micro.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, this is why I had these boys on, because I knew I just had to wind them up and then they would go, and it's perfect. But I mean, there's a lot of Canadian stuff that I'm really interested in as well, because I mean, I'm very curious to see the Buffy St. Marie doc, which should be really interesting, and stuff like Chandler Levick's film. I mean, I like movies, or I love movies.
It does look cool.
There's some really interesting.
Again, I love
sort of
that time period.
Canadian stuff out there that's really gonna sort of draw audiences in. I'm kind of curious for you guys, is there anything off the beaten path that you're looking forward to?
In general or Canadian?
I would say a little of both.
Well, I think one film that's not Canadian, but is one that I think a lot of people will be interested in seeing is Jafar Pani's No Bears.
Oh, for sure. No, that's a good point.
Especially given the horrible situation he's in right now, being arrested by the Iranian government. Some other movies that I'm just looking at a list of films that I kind of like either intrigued me or I was just kind of like, oh, this is interesting. In the documentary section, you have Laura Poitiers' All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, which is about Nan Goldin, which is playing 3 of the 4 major film festivals. Telluride hasn't announced their lineup yet. You have movies like Living with Bill Nighy, which played Sundance and now is being reintroduced to the Fall Film Festival lineup. You have a director like Mia Hansen-Love, who had a really wonderful movie a couple years ago with Bergman's Island, coming back with One Fine Morning with Leah Seydoux. Romanian cinema is one of the strongest aspects right now, and the director of 4 Months, 3 Weeks, and 2 Days comes back with RMN, which played Can. You have
Our man Werner Herzog's coming back.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and then you also have
his doc is about like the human brain, right? Or
Yes,
something?
yeah, and then you have
Just hearing that man just speak about the human brain is going to
well, also
great.
somebody looking at their
It'll be hypnotic.
Yeah.
where he is now in life, right? Because he's getting close to 80, so it's
Yeah.
like an older man looking back at his life and how the brain functions. But Ruben Östlund has Triangle of Sadness.
Oh my
Oh,
God,
of
another
course,
movie that
yeah.
it won the Palme d'Or. So I
Yeah.
think that will be a film that a lot of people are excited about.
Yeah.
And what a coincidence, it's from Elevation Pictures.
Yes.
To do this podcast here, we were contractually like obligated to mention every film that they. No, we're kidding. But we are excited for all of their films. Like, I love The Square. I love Force Majeure. I loved the trailer for I was gonna say 3,000 Years of Longing. But
And he's an interesting guy too. I got the chance to talk to him.
Yeah,
talk
I
to him
did
a few
too.
like
Yeah.
Force Majeure a few
Yeah,
years
so
back.
did I.
Yeah, no, such a fascinating guy.
he was such a good interview. I
Yeah.
remember I tell his story over and over again. I don't know if this interview even exists anywhere, but like anymore. I did it for tribute, and he brought up that piece of accordion music that he uses throughout Force Majeure.
Right,
And he's
right,
just
right.
like, oh, I found that. It's some kid on YouTube, and I just used that. And I was like, what? And he pulled up the video, and you can still find that video. It has like a ton of views, but it's just some kid playing the accordion, and it's that repeating kind of piece of score throughout the movie. Eric covered a lot of it. I think on the short side, something we laughed at when we went to the Canadian press conference. Matthew Rankin has Municipal Relaxation module. He's the director of the 20th Century.
Right, yeah.
And it's, a 6-minute short, and like the shorts program I think is awesome. And just like for us covering movies, we have to have a lot of that bigger stuff, and we don't cover shorts that often, depending on who the filmmaker is.
That's a good. I mean, if you want to take a risk, I mean, shorts is probably a good place
you
to
get a
start
good
because
mix,
it's very
right?
digestible and you get a real healthy mix of stuff. For
so
sure.
I think whatever shorts program that's playing in, keep an eye out for that, because like the 20th Century was wholly unique. Speaking of someone who has like a distinct voice,
Yeah.
so that's something that I'm gonna try to seek out, whether it's seeing it or getting a screener or something like that. But Matthew Rankin's, what was the full name again? I have it here. Municipal Relaxation Module. It's about a bench.
I like it.
Yeah.
Not just any bench, a park bench.
A park bench, yeah. So I think that's like the one Canadian smaller thing that I'm looking forward to.
Since we're at Elevation Pictures, and we also did you attend the Canadian press conference?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes.
We talked to him. We
Right,
had a croissant with Dave.
Yeah, sorry, Dave. See, this is the other thing where like the intensity of all this, your mind just melts.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I know.
Clement Virgo has Brother. Which I think that is going to be a film.
I think it's going to be a hell of a
definitely
film. Yeah.
Keep eyes on, and I really liked what he said. During that press conference where he was talking mainly to the other filmmakers that were there. Go to the parties, do the thing, the fun stuff, but go and watch your contemporaries' movies because these are the people that you're going to be coming up with.
Yeah.
And it was the most sincere and honest speech at that entire press conference, and it made me want to see that movie even more.
No, and I mean, it speaks to the importance of just watching film, no matter what part of the industry you work in. I mean, it's fun to go see the Marvel movies or the flashy movies or the this, that, or the other, but it's so important to experience as much as you can to really understand what the art of cinema really is. And I mean, I think this festival is a perfect encapsulation of that.
Yep. There's more than the MCU, and this is coming from a guy who loves the MCU.
I thought you were going to say there's more than meets the eye, like Transformers.
Yeah, there is also more than meets the eye, especially
But that's the thing. Like last year, you saw Pitchapong's Vera Sethukul's Memoria.
And
also Elevation.
I really liked it.
And it's like you open the floodgates to the world, and like you get to take a chance on filmmakers and storytellers and just what's out there, and not everything. That is the one thing as well going into the festival season where it's like you can go from one movie to the next and not one is the same. In terms of style, tone.
It can give you whiplash.
Exactly, and I think that also can be a detriment as well at times where. Sometimes you need to see the film again on a day where you're not seeing anything else, because if you see something that's really densely packed that is also then you go see Bros, which is more lighter and fun. It can really there can be discrepancies there, and I think like you have to again kind of really pace yourself and think like, okay, how many movies can I take in one day and I can really take, like watch the movie, be present in the moment and enjoy it for what it is. And not just be like, oh, well, I saw 7 movies in one day.
Don't be hard on yourself if you fall asleep, though.
Yeah.
And it's maybe not the movie's fault, it's your fault.
From a professional standpoint, that is something that happens to all of us. Because, and I mean, this is, to start putting a bow on it, and I mean, this is probably a little inside
You said that
baseball.
like 30 minutes ago.
Well, I know, but I mean, just to be a little inside baseball, like, we will all make our schedules, we will all plan them out very carefully, meticulously. The festival will start on a Thursday. By Friday, our schedules will be in the garbage.
Yeah.
And that's just a universal thing throughout, and I'm kind of curious for both of you. What's the one movie that's not moving, no matter what?
I think it's Fableman's. It's like an easy answer for me. And that's, I mean, maybe a cop-out, but I think that...
Not the Kevin Smith movie.
He's not here this year. He'll be around somehow. But he's at Fan Expo. I think... because we talked about how hard that movie is going to be to get a ticket to, like even the P&Is I think will be absolutely bonkers for it. It really, like, we're recording this pre-schedule, so we don't know how many screenings it's going to get, if it only has one P&I, if it has 2 public, if it only has 1 public screening, like, who knows? So, like, it is the calm before the storm, because, like, we're getting that very, very soon. But I think, like, that is the movie that I will be like, well, I'll clear my schedule around it, because like it is the first time he's coming. He is the king of Hollywood. Like, he's a director of my favorite movie ever. Like, he is iconic. That, like,
always your favorite movie.
And I really, really want to see that. But there's so many of those too, where like I will have those, one per day that I'm like kind of build my schedule around. But then, to your point, we'll change 50 times because I'm like, I have to fit this movie in. So I also have to fit this movie in. They're playing at the same time. Where can I move that? Move this over here. Move that. Day of, you go, fuck, okay. I'll
It's
move it over
Jenga,
here.
it's Tetris, it is the
It's
story
a
of our
blast.
lives.
I really obsess over it, and I really love it because like tomorrow is that day for us. Not to date this recording, but like I'm very excited to get that in my hands.
Is it tomorrow?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I thought it was the
schedule
25th.
Schedule
No,
drops
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Oh god.
And I'm excited to
Tiffer
that.
better be ready for this.
Yeah, Tiffer. Oh yeah, shout out to Tiffer
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
For this conversation exactly. Like, if you don't use Tiffer and you're going to the festival, search Tiffer because it will save you so much time, and it's such a wonderful help. So
Big love to Tiffer.com. The
Yeah.
boys over there, they are a godsend
They
for
really
not
are.
just us, but I mean people going on the regular because
yeah.
they are a tool beyond
useful.
comprehension.
It's
you know?
so useful. What about you, Ed?
I think the Fablemans, I mean, to your point, like, we love saying that phrase, to your point. Spielberg, Matt's favorite Spielberg movie being Jurassic Park, not
Yeah.
always, and mine being, my favorite movie of all time being Jaws. There is something about that experience being a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see the filmmaker who has shaped, your own perception of commercial cinema,
Yeah.
growing up. Like, even if you haven't seen a Spielberg movie, you know of his work,
Yeah.
because it's so influential into pop culture cinema, and to see a movie that is more personal and kind of maybe self-contained and something that is saying something about his own experiences will be one to really cherish if given the opportunity to see it in a venue like TIFF, and I think a lot of people will feel that way, whether it be film nerds or casual moviegoers, because Spielberg, just that name,
Yeah.
he's on that level where it's like you just say Spielberg, you kind of know, oh, filmmaker, the way that, Kubrick was, or, Hitchcock. There are a group of those filmmakers that, as much as I love people like Sarah Polley, you say Sarah Polley,
You might have to explain that to someone.
Yeah. Where with Spielberg, it's like, that's all you need, and I think like with him being here for the first time as a director with a film that he has made, that's going to be an opportunity of a lifetime.
I'm going to try to go to the public, even though sometimes with our press contacts that is a little easier than, the public, but I would really love to see that premiere and be there. But
Dave,
what about you, Dave?
Dave,
no,
for you,
I-
what elevation movie do you want to pick?
I mean, I'm with you on Fablemans, but I
Yeah.
mean, at the same time, it's one of those things where, on one end, as much as I want to see it, I'm also wondering what movie could I have seen while lining up to go see the
Sure,
Fablemans.
fair. And that's a great point.
But
Is there anything else?
I think and I'm blanking on the title, so help me, but I mean, I think it's the Martin McDonagh film.
Yeah.
Oh, the Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah,
Ed
because
Sheeran.
I mean, I love that man's work so much because I mean, it ranges from just the absurdist to like this very intense, emotional,
I
personal
agree.
drama that just draws you in. And I mean, as a fan of film in general, like this is the guy where it's like, oh, it's one of his films. I don't care. I don't want to see the trailer. I don't want to know the
Yeah.
synopsis. I'll go.
You'll line up.
Well,
Yeah.
reuniting Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell from In Bruges as
Yeah,
well is a
for
big
sure.
selling point.
For
so
sure.
I'm sure a lot of people
Another
feel
formal
that way.
People's Choice winner as well. He won
For 3 billboards,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Like-
or was that Shape of Water that won that year?
No, I thought Billboards.
No, I'm pretty sure it was Billboards.
Okay,
Yeah,
Billboards.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
because Shape of Water went on to
Won-
win the Best
Yeah.
Picture, the
Yeah.
Oscar, and was shot. See, that was an amazing experience. I know we're trying to wrap this up, but like watching the Shape of Water in the Elgin and
Elgin,
Winter
yeah.
Garden, and there's a sequence in
In
that
the Elgin
film
and Winter
where
Garden,
it
yeah.
adds this weird meta layer to watching the movie, where it's like you wouldn't get that experience unless you were in the theater watching it, right? Like you would see it at a regular Cineplex or multiplex or Landmark or whatever, and you'd be like, oh, like that's a beautiful theater or what have you, but like there was just something added to that experience of watching in the theater that they shot a sequence in that kind of just added this new layer of appreciation.
No, and I mean, that's one of those things that can really only be done in a city like this. Like, I mean, for example, if the Royal screens take this waltz again, I want to see it in the Royal. I want to see it in the Royal just because they shot a scene in the Royal.
Yeah.
Or what if, or as it's known in Canada, the F word
The F
outside
word.
of the
right.
Royal.
Yeah.
Or we go to the hotel that they shot Enemy at.
In Oshawa, yeah. There's some...
Or Nightmare Alley.
Well, that's why I would go to Parkwood in Oshawa every once in a while. It's just because...
Hey, man, I live a few blocks away from Pennywise's house. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, stuff like that is always fun. Yeah, Billy Madison's house or the Professor X's mansion in Oshawa.
Or Ready or Not.
And that's a part, like, for us locals, that is, like, you know, during the fest, there will be a lot of those movies. So, yeah, I'm pumped, man. Even doing this podcast, like, talking about it, I know it's, like, it is going to be a lot of work, but, like, it is my favorite time of the year. So, like, I'm psyched. So.
Boys, I got to thank you both for the time today, as always.
Thank you for having us.
Before we go, please tell my dozens upon dozens of listeners just where to find you boys.
You can find all of our work at UntitledMoviePodcast.com or on podcast services and on YouTube at Untitled Movie Podcast or Untitled Movie Reviews. Our most recent episode, we talked about Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal and if it was fake or real, and if that matters at all. Eric and I just shoot the shit, you know, every week, kind of talking about the industry, and just we go on for way too long.
You think this is long?
Yeah, and then we also
this is a massive In the Seats With episode.
Yeah,
for you guys, this is the micro episode.
I know. And then on our review side, we have some Marvel reviews up right now for She-Hulk, the first 4 episodes, as well as I Am Groot. It's been a slow month-ish for reviews.
Right, but you will have an interview with the director of Barbarian very soon.
Yep.
That will be posted. And you should also mention where they can go for the one-stop shop on Letterboxd.
Which is Untitled_movies. That's probably the easiest spot to find all of our work. And you can follow me on all social medias at Matt Rorabeck.
And I'm Eric Marchen. You can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Well, that's fantastic, boys. And you know what? As always, don't forget to follow us here at In the Seats With, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brain about current projects due to the industry and so very much more. Boys, I will see you both on the warpath. Thank you again for the time today.
Can't wait, man.
This episode is brought to you by
Elevation Pictures.
Love them. Thanks for the water.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.